Australian Aviation Podcast, the official podcast of Australian aviation, unpacking the latest insights, developments and issues impacting Australia's aviation sector.
Hello everybody, my name is Adam Thorne and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast, where we talk a bit of nonsense, we talk a bit about aviation, but we never talk nonsense about aviation. And I just invented that tagline. It's brilliant, wasn't it? Joining me to talk drivel is my co-host Jake Nelson. Jake, how are you?
You know perfectly well that's not true, Adam. We talk a lot of nonsense about aviation.
Don't say that. You'll encourage more of those horrible commenters that abuse us.
They don't need encouragement.
No, we've had quite a few abusive comments, haven't we, on a variety of topics. Can we? I don't want to read them out, but can we surmise some of the hatred?
Well, we've had some lovely comments on stories we've posted in the past couple of days about Virgin Australia's Pride flights and International Women's Day. First, just to clarify, International Men's Day, and I said this last year, I believe, and I'll say it again, is the 19th of November. The 19th of November is International Men's Day, but we've had some lovely comments. From a whole bunch of people who disapprove of Virgin Australia's Pride flights and who disapprove of people marking International Women's Day, and have taken to our page to leave some very unpleasant remarks. And to those people, I say, bugger off.
I'm not sure if we can say that. Can we use that word? Will that get bleeped out? Or do you think that's all right? Is that on the?
I presume it. I presume it's all right. But go away.
Go away.
Go away. Go back to your joyless, miserable little lives. Find some grass and touch it. What do you have nothing better to do? We run a clean, family-friendly aviation organization here, and we don't need to be constantly deleting sexist and homophobic abuse from our Facebook page. Go away.
Wow, beautiful. Right. We do have a couple of we have a couple of internal announcements actually.
We do.
To make. We are going to have to say goodbye this episode to one of the cast of monsters behind the scenes that Jake's referred to is Jordan the Great. Jordan the Great started, I think it was like a work experience, but we don't really know what he did. Probably junior, I don't know. Anyway, he came in here. And, he's just starting to learn how the cameras work or something. Next thing you know, he's built us a studio. No one told him to do that. That wasn't in the contract. But he's built us a studio here, which is one thing that has taken this whole, I say to another level, it's still rubbish, but it's taken
another flight level.
Yeah, exactly. It's taken it to another level. We're now we were on YouTube before. We're doing proper YouTube stuff. The views are soaring. That's largely due to Jordan the Great. So Jordan, if you are watching, he will be. Thank you very much. When we look at the greatest contributors in Australian aviation history, obviously we'll remember Jim Thorne, the man that invented Australian aviation.
No relation.
No relation. Then we'll think of Adam Thorne, the greatest editor of all time. They may mention you as a kind of like a subtext. And when they have like the Hall of Fame, like me and Jim are in it, I reckon Jordan...
Mainly because they think you're related when you're not.
Yeah, that happens a lot. But I think Jordan's got a great chance of joining us in the Hall of Fame. So thank you very much, Jordan.
We would not have been able to drive off the Dread Enoch without him.
Yeah, exactly. But in better news, I mean, he's gone. We've all moved on. We have a replacement person called Jacob. And Jacob, he tells
no relation.
He's from, get this, the ABC. This is a level of this is a level of professionalism we've never encountered before. So before we started recording this, Jacob was talking about like levels and warmth and stuff, and he wasn't talking about
white balance.
Yeah, white balance as well. Concepts we've never heard of.
I've heard of them.
Exactly, a professional organisation. So he is bringing a level. I'm sure the hits are going to soar now. He's bringing a level of professionalism to this organisation. We do wish Jacob well. On this new adventure, etc. It's only right, though, that he becomes part of the cast of kind of freakish creatures that you create to describe the background people.
Adam, if he's going to become part of the mythos, he needs to. It has to happen organically.
So you're not just going to add him in?
We can't force these things, Adam. The Dread Enoch, who lives in the vents, came out of, I think, lived in the vents, who came out of a gag, I think, about our studio constantly changing, or the fact that we never see the Dread Enoch or something like that as our producer. And Jordan the Great was, because of wonderful things he did for us. But Jacob the Pending, I don't know.
That's not very nice, is
yeah,
it?
He hasn't done much. It's his first
He
day.
hasn't done much.
He hasn't.
He's revolutionised this. Firstly, the only reason we're recording is because of him. Secondly, you were talking about this white balance thing. That's something he's done. What have you done?
It's his first day, Adam. It's got to happen organically. We can't force an entry into the mythos.
Okay, well, that's horrible. Well, yeah, no. Well, I'm going to ask you next week, and I expect you to have come up with something.
Adam, we can't force this. It has to grow organically like a fungus.
That's horrible. Right, we got any other shout-outs before we start talking about the news?
No.
No. Okay.
We've been told that we take too long to get to the news. I think we annoyed some people who were only interested in MH370 last week
they thought it was clickbait or something.
Yeah, by taking too long to get to it. So we should get to the news.
But what I don't understand about that is they were like, oh, it's clickbait. You just want people, but then that person was also clicking on it. So
it works.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Let's talk about the news, Jake. What's up first?
Well, we should probably talk about Qantas first, because we got the Qantas results last week, and $1.4 billion, or $1.39 billion, but what's $0.01 billion between friends, of pre-tax profits for the first half of the 2025 financial year. So that's up 11%. On the same time last year. Travel demand's been strong across all passenger segments. There's been a record number of Jetstar customers. We've seen Qantas Group domestic and international revenue up 5% each. Domestic earnings for Jetstar up 54%. International capacity for Jetstar to and from Australia also up by 26%. So Qantas doing well in no small part because Jetstar is doing well.
It's interesting because when Qantas kind of came out of COVID with these kind of record profits, a lot of the reason that was attributed to this was this kind of pent-up demand for travel, and also because effectively airlines were able to charge more because right at that point in time there was less capacity, etc., etc. But now we've got to the point, and we will talk about this a little later, where we're almost entirely over COVID. They're still posting really, really, really strong profits. Now, Qantas are in a bit of a difficult situation here because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. On the one hand, they have to post strong profits to keep their shareholders happy, also because they have to invest in aircraft. But it's still the case that Qantas, in the eyes of the Australian public, are kind of in a naughty corner a bit. Nobody wants to see Qantas make too much money. It sounds like they're playing it just about right. They're making 11% more than last year.
Enough. They're making enough.
Enough. They're also investing money back into getting more capacity, improving the customer service. So you would have to say that Vanessa Hudson, who's proven to be a very different CEO to Alan Joyce, where Alan Joyce was quite kind of, publicly facing and kind of bombastic, she's the sort of person that kind of keeps her head down and works behind the scenes. It does seem from the outside, but she's quietly doing a good job, and she's quietly kind of walking that tightrope quite well. Yeah,
it's been noted, a few times that she's got a bit of work to do if she wants to kind of restore the trust in Qantas that was sort of lost post-pandemic. There has been some sort of rumblings of movements. I think YouGov, their brand movers index, has seen Qantas's reputation lift a fair bit in the past year or so. So positive signs for Qantas. They're really having to rebuild their reputation and keep their heads down. Qantas cannot be affording to stick its head over the parapet at the moment. Besides which, there's so much interesting going on with the other airlines in Australia at the moment, which we'll get to a little bit later. But Qantas is probably glad for the breather. One thing Qantas did announce, speaking to the improvement of customer services and things like that, they are going to refresh the cabins on more than 42 737-800s are going to get new cabins. There's going to be new business and economy seats, bigger overhead lockers, new carpets, new sidewalls, new mood lighting.
Mood lighting. They love that, don't they? And there's all this nonsense about how the lighting can affect your mood and affect how you could sleep on board and all this kind of stuff. It's a light at the end of the day, but no credit to them for doing that. Yeah, so these will be the ones. Qantas is overhauling its fleet. It's renewing its fleet. The first of its A321XLRs. VHOGA, or Vahuga, if you will. No one's ever thought to say. He said that in the office earlier this week. I mean, it's nonsense. Vahuga.
It sounds like the sound that a cartoon wolf makes when he sees a pretty lady. But Vahuga, Great Ocean Road, has left the paint shop in Europe. So Qantas will be getting its that first one expected around June, I believe. But the 737s that are getting the overhauled, they're some of the newer ones, the ones that are going to be last to leave the fleet. So that makes sense because, you don't want to be overhauling a 20-something-year-old 737 that's going to be leaving service soon anyway. But so some of the aircraft that are retiring earlier is also going to be refreshed. Most of them are the ones that are towards the end of the queue. This refresh is going to start soon. The first refreshed 737 is expected to start flying from 2027. This comes after last year, by the way. Qantas revealed that it was going to upgrade economy seats on its older A330-200s. This is going to include 4K OLED screens for watching movies, and again, new mood lighting. I don't know if I want mood lighting on a plane. Mood lighting has connotations that I'd rather avoid on a plane.
Right, okay. What it also does show as well is that we know that Boeing obviously have had more problems with delays to delivering more aircraft.
As have Airbus.
Yeah, exactly. But there is this industry-wide issue of supply chain issues that are kind of a post-COVID hangover. Also, there's this kind of talent crisis across the industry. It all feeds in. So Qantas are kind of covering themselves a little bit here in terms of saying that we are still going to have 40 all aircraft that, to all intents and purposes, for the people they got on board, will seem like new aircraft. This is also another sign of Qantas sort of perhaps learning from its mistakes and overly investing in customer service, overly investing in that customer experience as well. Perhaps this isn't the sort of thing Qantas would have done 4 or 5 years ago, but it's clearly this is another sort of statement that Qantas says we take our customers seriously.
Yeah, exactly. And this aircraft shortage is, it's biting airlines all over the place. Air New Zealand has been struggling because its delays of new aircraft. Its orders of new aircraft have been delayed. This whole Skynest thing has been pushed back.
The youth hostel bunk beds.
As you put them, youth hostel bunk beds.
Yeah, that's what they are.
So Air New Zealand is overhauling cabins on some of its 787s at the moment, but basically like up to I think 11 of Air New Zealand's planes or something like that are out of service at any given time, or up to that, or have been over the first sort of half of this financial year, just because of maintenance requirements, and there's been problems with engines, and it's not been a good year for Air New Zealand and for airlines in general, who are really struggling with these supply chain issues. So refreshing older aircraft and kind of keeping them going as long as possible does make sense. And this is as well why Virgin has been trying to snap up other 737-800s like the 2 that it got back from Rex.
It was interesting because I think we spoke maybe last week or the week before about how
with Hannah, I think.
Yeah.
Sometimes I still hear her voice.
What are you on about?
I miss
Hannah. I
miss Hannah. Hannah was lovely.
Yeah, you were really worried about her at first. It's like, oh, maybe she's going to take my spot. Actually, on that note, I don't know if Hannah's going to be watching this. If you are watching this, Hannah came on the show and basically gave us a scoop within about 4 minutes of being on this show. I'm pretty certain it was the most viewed story we did all week. It went absolutely gangbusters. Kudos to her. We spoke about it a little bit last week, but I want to talk about it a little bit again. And this was the idea that mid-COVID, early in COVID even, Virgin Australia went into administration. During that point, it lost effectively some of its leased 737s to Rex, who took those aircraft, painted them in Rex colours and flew them. One of the aircraft that it took, it kind of renamed or re-registered with the registration VHREX or VHREX, which is actually a registration that they prized. It was like the prize number plate. It used to be used on their smaller Saabs, I think first registered in 2010, and they kind of transferred it to their flagship fleet of 737s. When Rex went into administration, Virgin took some of their aircraft back, which included that very same aircraft with that same registration. Now, you would have imagined that they would have put a new registration on it, but they haven't. They've kept VHREX. Now, it could be simply that it was cheaper or easier, or that no one's got around to changing it yet. I don't like that theory because I'm a journalist. Never let the facts get in the way of a good story. So now they are flying VH Rex around the country. I wrote the story. I did give Hannah a credit. I wrote the story. The way I see it in my head, I think I talked to you about this in the office, it's like holding the severed head of your rival to the baying masses. Like, we've got Rex. We've got Rex. At one point when I wrote the copy, I wrote that line in, but I remember thinking, if I publish that, like, Jake will kill me. He'll be like, this is disgusting.
Holding your severed head in front of the baying crowds in the office.
Exactly. Yeah, but just talking about aircraft registrations. Anyway, it is a fantastic story. I did call Virgin and asked if they like to give a comment. They didn't like to give a comment. I might chase them up on this, actually, in a few months' time. We will keep an eye on whether Virgin is still flying VH Rex, and also whether they would be willing, in the spirit of generosity, to give VH Rex back to Rex. I say in Virgin's defense, it's a bit of a silly story. During Rex's administration, they offered to fly for free Rex customers who basically lost out on their flights. So Virgin went in there, flew, I think it was hundreds of thousands of people? It was like
quite a few.
It was like 130 something thousand people. That obviously cost them money. Now, obviously, they were booking them on empty seats, but that still adds to weight. That still costs them money. So I kind of feel that having done that very nice thing, they are entitled to take VHREX. Nonetheless, we will be keeping an eye on that story.
Well, if Rex wants its revenge...
Go on. This is going to be ridiculous.
If Rex wants its revenge... Virgin Australia's, I think, 3-letter code is VOZ.
Yeah.
And they had a VH VOZ, which was one of their 777-300s.
Yeah.
And so I think that I'm looking at flight radar now, and that aircraft, hasn't gone back into service, at least not with Virgin. But that registration, nobody's using it at the moment, so far as I can tell. So if Rex manages to get back on its feet, maybe it'll, if it buys a new ATR, it can slap VHVOZ on it.
It's a shame that Michael Venus, the legendary head of comms at Rex, wasn't still there, because that's a sort of dastardly thing he would do with complete agreement from the board. Whoever it is who does end up taking up Rex, you heard it from Jake Nelson first. That is what you do.
And then you go to Virgin and say, want to trade?
Like a prisoner swap.
Yeah.
And what they do, imagine this. So it's like a dark night and it's raining and windy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's just like
when you said dark night, I thought you meant Batman or something.
Yeah,
well,
it's kind of like that, right? But it's a dark evening, and there's like just a couple of flashlights there, and they're across a bridge, and there's just a figurehead from Virgin and a figurehead from Rex, and just two massive aircraft. And then they say, like, do you want to do a deal?
Or like the tails?
Yeah. And then they just like, they slowly taxi across, and then they all go the other way. It would be glorious, wouldn't it?
I don't know if Virgin would be willing to trade a 737-800 for like a Saab or something.
Or maybe they just take the number plates they're actually written on, but they're meant because the
new CEO of Virgin one day wakes up with the tail of a plane in their bed.
Right, this is more nonsense even than normal. What are we talking about next? We've got any more news stories?
Well, on the subject of Virgin, big news, welcome news for Virgin from last week. The federal government, the Foreign Investment Review Board, and Treasurer Jim Chalmers have approved, as we long suspected that they would, the purchase of 25% of Virgin by Qatar Airways. Now, this is a key step in enabling the launch of these wet leased flights to Doha. It doesn't enable it by itself. That is the allocation of capacity is still in the hands of the International Air Services Commission, or IASC, and they have to make the ultimate decision. But this was a long time coming, at least as far as Virgin and Qatar were concerned. And it comes after the ACCC said that it found no problems. It came after the Department of Transport said that these flights would be allowed. Probably avoids the government having to make a very controversial call before the election to knock back the deal, because there would be pointed questions as to why. We've got some more details as well. There will be this structured secondment program, which will see 20 pilots and 40 cabin crew sent to Doha to gain experience with long-haul flying with Qatar Airways, and their positions are going to be backfilled by 60 new staff from Australia. So Jim Chalmers said there are legally enforceable legally enforceable conditions on this, ensuring Australian representation on Virgin's board. There's going to be protection of customer data. He said it will increase Virgin's capacity on key international routes, provide a long-term pathway to operate its own long-haul flights. The proposal also expected to deliver broader economic benefits, including more job creation in Australia, support for the tourism industry, and enhancing Australia's position as a key travel hub.
So this was a clever part of a deal. Now, not necessarily saying it's a concession in that Virgin probably would have done this anyway, but a kind of a part of the deal, or a part of what has swayed it for the federal government, is this idea that eventually Virgin pilots and Virgin crew could be operating these aircraft. And so federal government, the backstory here is the federal government effectively blocked Qatar from flying its own routes, its Qatar routes to Doha, what, a year, 18 months or so ago. So obviously...
Not from flying them entirely, just from...
but from getting additional
Yes.
additional flights. And obviously there was a lot of controversy at the time with the federal opposition basically saying, why wouldn't you allow this, because this will bring down prices when prices are high. By making this concession on the Virgin branded flights, they are able to say this is jobs for Australian workers, this is getting more Australian pilots and crew potentially flying these big long haul aircraft. So it does make sense. It allows the deal to be substantially different in the eyes of the government, and it gives them a kind of riposte, because if a coalition were to turn around before an election and go, well, hang on a minute, why have you changed your mind? They can say, well, hang on, this is actually a fundamentally different thing. That also negates some of the criticism that Qantas have had, who have effectively said that that Qatar are going through the back door. So it is an important concession. Now, Jake's more of an expert on this. I think he had to correct some of my copy initially. But effectively, we've had the federal government have given, or you've had Jim Chalmers give his sign off for it, for the deal itself to buy the 25%. Obviously, the deal is kind of wrapped up in the flights. In terms of launching these flights, that's the IASC.
Yes.
Now, the IASC have yet to give their kind of final approval, but the statements they've made so far were that kind of like, based on what we know so far, this seems like it's going to be okay, right?
Yeah, so the IASC hasn't said anything.
Right.
Generally speaking, they will only say something when they're awarding capacity or, knocking back capacity applications. They wrote to the Department of Transport asking, hey, would these flights be allowed under the current bilateral service agreements? And the Department of Transport wrote back saying, yes, they would. There has been, basically submissions essentially entirely in support to the IASC for these flights going ahead. So it would be very odd if the capacity was not allocated, particularly considering that nobody else wants it right now.
So it's
nobody else is trying to fly from Australia to Doha, under the Australian flag. Qantas is not looking to do it, and we don't have any other local airlines that would do it. So it would seem odd if the IASC, knocked back this application.
So we're not 100% there, but the biggest hurdle, or the biggest hurdles now have been cleared. The flights have long been on sale. So you would say, as a betting man now, it's like 95% this is going to happen.
Basically, yeah.
Okay, welcome back. So we covered a few topics there, including the Virgin Qatar deal. What are we going to talk about next, Jake?
The gender pay gap data was released this morning as we're recording by the Workplace Gender Equality Agency in the lead up to International Women's Day on Saturday. And International Men's Day is on November the 19th. Stop commenting. But yes, the data from the Workplace Gender Equality Agency showed that, generally speaking, the gender pay gap is still pretty high at the major airline groups. There have been efforts towards greater equity, but the median pay gap at Qantas Group, and this is total remuneration, so salary plus benefits plus whatever, is 32.4% in favour of men, 46.2% in favour of men at Virgin. Now, this is not because people are being paid, because women are being paid less to do the same jobs, which I believe is illegal. This is because aviation is a very male-dominated industry, particularly in the higher-paying positions. So pilots, engineers, that sort of thing. Most of the female employees you will find at major airlines are working in lower paid customer facing roles like airport support staff and cabin crew. The stereotype of male pilot, female cabin crew still largely, unfortunately, alive and well. So the airlines are taking steps to remedy this. They're trying to encourage more women into the cockpit and into the engineering bay. It's just there's a lot of inertia to overcome, and Qantas's median pay gap went down from last year. Which Catherine Walsh, the chief people officer, says it was driven by a continued recovery in flying that meant mainly female cabin crew had increased hours on average, which led to higher pay. Also, these new enterprise agreements has raised the pay of cabin crew. Virgin, meanwhile, its gender pay gap increased, which Virgin says was due to hiring more largely female customer-facing employees. So headcount over the past 4 years, has gone from 3,000 to 8,000 employees. In particular, in the 2024 reporting period, they had an increase in headcount in these customer-facing teams, cabin crew and guest services, which are disproportionately female. So the gender pay gap has increased largely because there are more lower-paying jobs or like more lower paid employees at Virgin now who tend to be women.
It's important to say, I think two points I would make on this. Firstly, I do believe that airlines in Australia have made a genuine attempt to try to change this kind of gender gap, which is basically male pilots and engineers and female cabin crew. They have made an effort to try and balance that out. You're seeing not just things like all female flights, but a genuine effort to engage younger people and to do something to remedy that. Don't forget as well the crucial fact that the CEO of Virgin and the CEO of Qantas are both women. So
yes,
not necessarily
for the moment anyway. Yes. Don't know who's going to be replaced.
The other thing that I would say in the kind of defense of the aviation industry is that when we look at these problems, it's not fair just to blame the airlines because there's like a pipeline, right, that comes down. And what effectively happens, and I've gone on this rant before, is when you've got boys and girls in school, they're both just as interested in kind of STEM subjects as each other. You almost see a 50-50 participation or interest. As they get older, you see effectively what would lead to more lucrative STEM jobs. You see the women kind of fall down and the men fall up. And as you get towards careers, that disparity kind of increases. Now, why is that? Nobody necessarily knows. I would imagine it's something that is a variety of purposes, but it's not a variety of reasons. But it's not fair necessarily just to blame the aviation industry because they're at the end of that pipeline. And so you've got to look more generally at how we get more women into STEM. Of course, one of the things is, and I cover space as well on the side, but when we look at the kind of future jobs in Australia, we talk about this kind of Future Made in Australia initiative that the government likes to talk about. The jobs of the future are going to be predominantly STEM jobs. We're going to have this mad thing where we had this sort of industrial revolution, 100 years or so ago, and then we moved into more of a service economy, but we're going to be swinging back to making things and STEM jobs and AI and engineering and all this kind of stuff. So that's where the workforce is going to have to go. We will not be able to fulfill those jobs unless we have more young women effectively take those graduate positions and more of a balance. Because at the moment, if we've got this talent crisis and we're ignoring 50% of our workforce generally, then we're in a lot of trouble. So this is something that not just the airlines, but the whole industry and the whole country needs to think about how we solve. If you were of the view, just to continue this rant, if you were of the view that these jobs tend to be more interesting to men than women, I would say the fact that as kids there's an equal interest proves that that is not the case. Whatever your view, it proves that there is an equal interest. So we need to try to get to the bottom of what those reasons are and how we can fix it. You are seeing the industry, I think, genuinely try to do a lot to help. But at the same time, it is a kind of complicated issue. And obviously, Qantas and Virgin will get a lot of stick. But to argue their case, it's not as simple as it seems on the surface.
And this is one reason why, by the way, complaining about, and I talk about this in an op-ed for the Australian Aviation magazine that's probably going to result in a few flaming bags of dog crap being left on the door of our offices. But this is one of the reasons why complaining about DEI hires is absurd. because it's the entire point of like these diversity, equity, inclusion initiatives is not to give unqualified people jobs because they happen to be female or because they happen to be people of color or because they happen to be LGBT or whatever. It is about broadening the hiring pool so that more qualified people are available and they are not excluded simply because of who they are. It's as you said, Adam, what sense is there in ignoring 50% of your potential workforce?
Exactly. So even if we take the apparent ideology to one side, financially it doesn't work. We need boots on the ground. We need female boots on the ground.
And it's been proved, it's been shown. Time and again in various organizations that if you have a diversity of employees and a diversity of thought and a diversity of ideas, your business or your organization will perform better because you're not limited to a very narrow set of ideas. You need more people providing more perspectives on how to solve problems. And to continue on this soapbox for a moment, by the way, you got to go on a rant. Now I get to go. Now I get to go on a rant. We saw some comments from some of these lovely people on our Facebook pages talking about how that Delta flight that overturned in Toronto. That was there was a woman flying that plane. She was a DEI hire. Look what DEI is doing. Why is it that when a plane crashes that a woman happened to be flying, that woman is representative of her entire gender, whereas when a white guy is flying a plane and the plane crashes, he's not representative of every white guy on the planet? And I know that it's kind of weird coming from us, two white guys, but I mean, white guys are perfectly capable of not knowing what they're doing, as we evidence ourselves, Adam.
Whoa! I mean, yeah, go on. I mean, they can chop this out. I mean, if you're Jacob, it's his first week. He's got some great YouTube for the TikTok or whatever. Jake's rant. This is glorious.
If you listen to us on a weekly basis, you'll know that white guys regularly don't have a clue about what they're talking about.
Okay, welcome back there. You got your soapbox there. I see some passion there. I like this. Right, let's take a breather. What are we gonna talk about next?
Well, we had over the weekend, sticking with politics, there was an announcement from the coalition that, or announcement from Peter Dutton, that if the coalition wins the upcoming federal election, they're going to purchase a fourth squadron of F-35s. And I believe you covered this one,
I
Adam.
did cover this one. So effectively, the backstory is that Australia got involved in the F-35 program. I think it was like 25 years ago, to a long, long time. And that's because when you create a next generation of fighter jets, it's not just like when you get a new games console. It's, years and years in work, and you don't just have to tender out the contracts to the companies that make the aircraft. You need the actual nation states involved as well, because there's an element of sort of secrecy involved. So there's this huge build-up, and Australia was one of the founding partners of the program. Now, when the initial order went in for Australia to get some F-35s, which were intended to replace our classic Hornets, the order was for kind of 72 initially, but with the option to take that to 100. And it was assumed even a few years ago, Australia would take up that option. What happened is the Labour government came in and they had a series of kind of like defence strategic reviews and what have you, that basically said that we need to rethink how we spend our money. And the decision that was made was that the money that would have been spent, or that was kind of earmarked to spend on an extra sort of 30 or 28 F-35s, would instead be made on procuring and making ultra-long range weapons. And just to sort of dumb down the geopolitics of it, this is because supposedly our main threat is China. They are a long way away, but we need to send out the message through strength that we can fire our missiles a long way away, both on the ground through the army and also the missiles that could be fired by F-35. So effectively they said, we're going to take that money and we're going to put it into this. One of the things they also did was to commit to extending the life of our Super Hornets and our Growlers, which make up a sort of smaller share of our fighter jets, because their argument is they're actually still pretty good. So they can still fulfill a role. We've obviously got an election coming up in a couple of months now. And of course we've had Donald Trump, your favourite person, he has basically told nations, you need to spend more money on defence because we're not going to bail you out anymore. And whatever the rights and wrongs of that are, we are seeing...
This is not the Defence Connect podcast.
It's getting there. It's getting there, all right?
No, that's why I'm saying we're not getting into the
but
rights
anyway,
and wrongs.
You saw, say, the UK at the weekend pledge to increase their defence spending from like 2.3% to 2.7% or whatever. So there is now an onus that as a country, apparently, we need to be spending more money on defence. Peter Dutton has come out and basically said, if I or if a coalition win the election effective immediately, he will go to Lockheed Martin, who are the prime contractor, and will basically say we want to take that option of those extra sort of 30 or so aircraft, which is quite a big pledge. Now, you could say, good on Peter Dutton, we should always have taken this option for more aircraft. You could also say that we don't know whether this would actually happen because, say, if a coalition were to win, they might be in a coalition with independents or whatever. So it might not necessarily be down to them. Also, if they were to put an order in, we don't know necessarily how long it would take to get those aircraft into because obviously they've got a big order, but we've talked before about supply chain issues. So whether this actually happens, we don't know. But nonetheless, it would be a big commitment, and that itself would seemingly on the surface be very good news for the RAF. Now, there's also been criticism. There's been, plaudits and criticism of the F-35. So the kind of a gist of it is the F-35 is what they call like a multi-role jet. So effectively, it's a Swiss Army knife, jack of all trades. It can do stealth. It can do, in-air fighting. It can fire missiles on the ground. It can do a bit of everything. The critics say that we're moving to a world where drones are going to be the main use in warfare. They would look at the war in Ukraine and say the drones are what is dominating this war rather than traditional fighter jets. There's obviously arguments on both sides, but nonetheless, it does seem that if a coalition win, we're going to have more aircraft on the ground. That would also have to involve...
You'd prefer them in the air.
Yeah. But that would also say we'd have to think about investment in the engineering, in the sustainment as well, in putting weapons on these things. So it would be a lot more involved than just bringing some new aircraft. You have to train up some more pilots, etc. But nonetheless, that is the first kind of big sort of aviation commitment of this election campaign. I think I got that all right, to be honest. I don't like having to talk about the news, but yeah, I did all right there.
Yeah, you also did a story, Adam, about
I'm down on the ground, and you're like, let me breathe. You're just like kicking me in.
You also did a story about a space capsule.
Yeah. Now you could say actually this story it's got nothing to do with aviation. Well, you would be wrong. So basically, this is actually kind of a landmark moment for the aerospace industry because on Friday, a capsule, effectively a spacecraft, that blasted off, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, and this went into orbital space, effectively into real space, and was a kind of medicine factory in space. And what this meant is that you can do experiments in space that you can't do on the ground, and you can potentially make things in space that would be more difficult to make on Earth. And so this company, VADA, I believe they're called, they're in the early stages trying to become a pioneer in this. Anyhow, what they need to do is they put the capsule in orbit, but you obviously need to get it back. There's certain regions you can take in space, but it's basically better to get hold of a thing. Now, in order to do that, obviously you need to find somewhere to land it. And they chose Southern Launch's, I may have said this incorrectly, Coonabar Test Range, which is basically a big swathe of desert in South Australia. Now, I do believe we have recovered spacecraft in Australia before, but this is the first time we've done it under this kind of new Australian piece of legislation that basically means it's going to be easier to do this on a regular basis. And so this medicine capsule in space crashed down in the desert of South Australia, and they kind of run off and collected it. The photos of it are amazing. It reminds me of, like in Superman, when like Clark Kent arrives as a baby and it like just crashes somewhere and they find it.
Well, he was Kal-El at the time. He hadn't been named Clark Kent because the Kents, obviously, when he first crashed in the space capsule, they'd yet to find him, but his parents had named him Kal-El.
A loser. Anyway, so the capsule comes down. It's basically got Superman in it, right? And the photos are amazing because you can see how charred it is, basically, because it's come through the Earth's atmosphere. And I was speaking to Amy, who works at Southern Launch, who's fantastic. And she was telling me that I think it actually kind of came down. Superman hit the ground at like 1 o'clock in the morning. The whole team was out there. They've got this amazing picture of it, kind of shows it streaking through the sky. And they had all these kind of various telescopes and equipment. They were able to track exactly kind of where it would come down. And then they got in a Jeep or whatever and drove off and collected it for testing. But the reason why this is significant is it's going to lead to a lot more of these things happen. Now, obviously, it's very unlikely it's going to knock any planes out of the sky. But nonetheless, what's happening is Australia is positioning itself as a world leader for this. Which is a lot of this is because we have the land going spare, we have the people, we have a technology, we have a lot of advantages. But
to build it faster, stronger, better than before.
Yeah, like the castle, we were talking about that earlier.
I was talking about the $6 million man, but...
Okay, yeah. I've never watched that.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know what I was going about. But anyway, it's a very interesting story and a very cool picture if you want to go and check it out. What are we talking about next? Don't keep going at me,
do you want to go for a break, Adam?
No, we've done 2 breaks.
No, we haven't.
Yes, we have.
No, we haven't.
100%.
We haven't.
100%.
We have, though.
Yeah, we have gone for 2 breaks.
We've had 1 break.
You sure?
We've had 1 break.
I'm pretty certain we've had 2. Yeah. So, our new producer, Jacob, is told us we have gone for 2, so you've got it wrong. There you go. Oh, I won't give him a nickname. He hasn't proved himself. Yes. He's the killing Jacob, my new favourite person at the company.
We've only had 1 break, Adam.
We had 2. We've 100% had 2. This guy worked at the ABC. You've not worked at the ABC, have you?
Yes, I have.
Have you?
Yes.
When?
I was an intern once.
Yeah,
I was an intern twice.
Yeah, what did you cover as an intern at the ABC?
Well, one time I was in News 24, and another time I was assisting a reporter with research work.
Oh, excellent. Yeah. Well, anyway, the point is that he is right. We have had 2 breaks. I want to take my big foot.
Are they going to cut this out?
No, they're not. No, they're not. I'm going to put my foot down and say, no, we've had 2 breaks. And we're going to steam on. So there you go. Yeah. You look a bit sad now, don't you?
We've had 1.
Go on.
All right. If we're not going for our second break of the show, then we should talk about Skytrans.
Skytrans. Let's talk about Skytrans.
So Skytrans has received the air operator certificate that will allow it to operate its A319s. Now, these are not A319s that Skytrans is going to be operating in its own right. They're not going to be doing regular passenger transport services for Skytrans. Instead, they will be used for wet leasing, for ACMI, as the technical term goes.
So wet leasing, just for the industry parlance, this is basically when the kind of the operator of the aircraft gives the aircraft and its crew to an airline so they can sell it under their brand. But it will be Skytrans people, and it's a Skytrans aircraft, right?
It's a Skytrans aircraft, and it was. So the first A319 touched down in mid-December. Its second one arrived at the end of last month. They've done the proving flights for their A319s, and the A319 is basically ready to go. CASA has signed off on the AOC update that will allow these A319s to start flying. Now, most of the wet leasing that's done in Australia at the moment through people like Alliance is on like long-term contracts. So, Qantas is hiring these Alliance planes for QantasLink operations to, fly the E190s to regional destinations. They were going to, I think they're flying them to East Timor. They'd planned to fly Darwin to Singapore with those. That's been shuffled around a couple of times. But these are long-term contracts that are like, secure for quite a while. The idea with Skytrans's A319s is at the moment, the plan is that they will be actually used to boost passenger capacity for airline clients during peak season. So they're looking to do more short-term leases. So basically, if you need more capacity during the peak, if you're a regional carrier who wants to try out a new route, some of your planes are undergoing maintenance and you need a plane in the air now, Skytrans has these A319s to help you. So that's sort of where they're at the moment. Now they're planning on having 3 in the country by the end of this year, and then going up to 13 to 15 eventually. But this is sort of their play to get a piece of this global firm, Avia Solutions Group, that bought Skytrans last year. They want a piece of the Australian aviation market.
And I suppose they're quite convinced that these kind of shortage of aircraft is going to continue for quite a while. So if you've got aircraft, if you've got crews, then you hold the aces, and you're going to hold the aces for quite a while.
And I think I believe these are A319s that they already have, or that they can lay their hands on easily. Like I think the one that's operating now used to fly for like ITA, which is Italian airline, but that's been, I think they've got a few ad hoc charters lined up for that one. But Avia Solutions, Avia has a large fleet of aircraft. And they're, sourcing these, some like maybe older kind of midlife aircraft from elsewhere. And they're, I spoke to Gitas Gamiliauskas, who's the managing director of Skytrans.
Great name, by the way.
Yeah, he's Lithuania, I think, Lithuanian. But Gitas, if you're listening and you're not Lithuanian, I apologize, correct me if I'm wrong. But he's basically said, we can get these aircraft. We're not really concerned about the global aircraft shortage. This is an opportunity for us rather than a problem.
Okay, that sounds good. We should probably think about wrapping up. Have we got one more story, or are you?
Well, there was something we were discussing earlier. This airport theory that apparently TikTok influencers are.
This is nonsense, because all Gen Z people are idiots. They're all on TikTok. I mean, if you are on TikTok watching us at some point, we love you. We'll take your views. We'll take your money. Go on.
This was something that was reported on Yahoo. It was via the New York Post originally, I think. But TikTokers are deliberately showing up late to the airport.
Oh, they're so lazy, aren't they, Gen Zers?
Well, the idea is airport theory. You arrive at the airport 15 minutes in advance to try and clear security. That goes against kind of the conventional wisdom of showing up hours in advance. And basically the idea is if you show up as late as possible, and if you can get through security quickly, you can get on your plane without having to wait around at the airport for ages. Of course, if that goes wrong, and it very easily can, you miss your flight.
It's stupid. This whole thing is stupid. I don't know where it starts. Obviously, the plan is stupid, because if you leave it to the last minute, you very much risk missing your flight. But also, like, the idea that someone think this is like a really original idea, it's ridiculous. And also, like, how much time these idiots got on their hands that they're recording these videos telling people this apparently incredible theory. I personally, being a very cautious person, I like to get to the airport quite early. So I love the airport. Love aircraft. I get nice and early, have a little bit of look around, see if I go to W.H. Smith's, maybe buy a magazine. Go and get a Guzman and Gomez. Just look out the window and enjoy the aircraft. Why you would want to have less aviation time, I don't know.
Well, possibly they don't want to get up early.
Because they're lazy. They're just lazy.
We all hate getting up early to catch a 7:00 flight. That's terrible. Why would you want to get up early?
Well, no, I get that. But I would say that it's just what you got to do. Well, I mean, that was a bit rubbish as a final story, but we get to have a dump on the Gen Zers. Right, okay, we will wrap the show up there. We've had a bit of a chat. We've had 2 breaks, so I think we've done everything we need to do.
Not sure about that.
Right, I will be coming back to this next week, and I want a full apology because I'm right.
I apologize for nothing.
On that note, we'll end the show. Jake, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
I will say goodbye. We'll be back on this show same time next week, but from us. See you later.
See ya.